Okay, APUSH students, this is your Chapter 9, Transforming the Economy from 1800 to 1860. It's really a straightforward section. It's not very difficult. Won't take us too long to work our way through it. Okay, the American Industrial Revolution. I've talked to you about this in the early 1800s, kind of sometimes known as the Second Industrial Revolution. Whether at home or a factory, work became more rote, meaning more repetitive, and efficient by doing specific tasks. We're getting assembly line type stuff. We first see this in slaughterhouses for animals such as pigs. You get Porkopolis, Cincinnati. You get shoe factories where somebody's doing the same thing every single day and just repetitive, very repetitive. The textile industry is incredibly important. It was the first really industrial industry in England, and it'll also be the first big dog for America here. And the British had tried to protect their economic secrets of the Industrial Revolution by forbidding mechanics, people who worked in these factories, and their special machines to leave Britain. However, a British man by the name of Samuel Slater emigrated to America in disguise, and he had written down and basically drawn out some of the British mills, had mapped them out. And he's going to come to America. He's going to build his own, and he's going to go get rich from that. So both sides had advantages. The United States had a tremendous amount of natural resources, far more than Britain did. And they institute tariffs on foreign goods to make their local industries more competitive. This way, if you're the South, if you buy from Britain, it's going to cost you just as much as if you buy from the North. So why don't you buy from the North? Britain had a large population, which is their advantage. Their population is still bigger than ours at this point. That provides them with a huge, cheap labor source. The United States improved on British machines. That's going to help us as well. We had something you need to remember called the Lowell system. And that's where a bunch of these farmers' daughters go and work in these factories. And sort of like boarding schools, like they live at the factory. They're going to have curfews, times when they go to sleep. Basically, everything's provided to them by the employees or employers. They're not allowed any alcohol. The girls, for the most part, will read some primary sources about it. Many of them really enjoyed the experience. They're single girls with the expectation that when they get older and get married, that they leave the mill system. And these farmers' daughters on these big families out in the farm, seen as sort of a liability. They can't help quite as much as the boys can on the farm. And so they're able, a lot of their money will go back to the home and help, their parents and stuff. But for women, it gives them a taste of independence. And it's very important to remember. Okay. And American mechanics and technological innovation. Remember, innovation is new ways of using things, new ideas. U.S. patents increased drastically between 1820 and 1860. A name you have to remember is Eli Whitney. He invents the cotton gin in 1793, which is going to help separate cotton from its seeds. It actually keeps slavery going in the cotton fields, makes it more profitable. So slavery is going to continue in the South. So you can kind of look at it as a negative. Interchangeable parts used for guns began to be applied to other areas. So think of modern day vehicles. A steering wheel off of a 2019 Chevy Silverado will fit any 2019 Chevy Silverado. It's an interchangeable part. Products become more abundant, more of them, and cheaper. And that's nice. I mean, it's going to be more affordable for the lower class, for the working class people. It's very important. Wage workers and labor movement. Now, unions formed in this time period. Now that we have factories, you're beginning to have people get together because they have by yourself, you have no leverage. If you say you don't like what you're getting paid, they'll just say, don't let the door hit you on the way out. But if the employer has 1,500 workers in his factory and 1,200 of them are ready to walk out, well, that gives him leverage and he's got to listen. He might have to give them a little bit of pay raise, perhaps. In the early days, the American law viewed unions as an illegal entity, which was bad. They rule against unions. That's going to change, very important. It's going to change in Commonwealth versus Hunt in 1837. Massachusetts State Supreme Court declare unions legal in that state. It's more symbolic at the time. It's not like labor rights are gaining a whole lot, but it is a moral victory, and it is going to lead to better victories down the line. Eventually, what you're going to see with the labor movements are that we're going to work for 8-hour work days. We're trying to get that. We're looking for 40-day work weeks, better conditions, and things like that. But it's not going to be an easy road to get there. But that road really starts right now. All right, market revolution, we've sort of talked about in class a little bit. What was it? Well, it's a change in labor systems and population, and of course, transportation. Greatly affected the Northeast and the Midwest because these are the areas that are going to have factories and they're going to have bigger markets, bigger populations. The transportation revolution is going to forge regional ties. That's important. It's going to link these regions together through trade. Germans and Irish made up a large portion of immigrants, especially in this time period. And remember, there's an Irish potato famine in the 1840s. Many Irish, even before then, Irish were coming in. So were Germans. There's tough times in Europe, and America seems to be a land of opportunity, a place where you can come and buy land for yourself. We get the National Road, which was funded by federal government, and that's important for trade purposes. You also get the canal boom, starting with the Erie Canal, which linked Albany to Buffalo, and beyond that to the Great Lakes and the rivers. And it's huge. I mean, there's huge impact to this. Canals and roads change the environmental landscape of the United States. You've got to clear out a lot of trees. The Erie Canal, they called the Big Ditch. You know, they're digging large areas to link this waterway. And other canals emerge, connecting more of America together. And the state governments begin subsidizing canals, meaning that you're going to have state tax dollars going to build canals because it's seen as something that will benefit the state, the common people. More importantly, even than canals, we will get railroads in the 1830s, which linked the North and the Midwest together. Livestock and wheat were transported between the two regions. You need to remember that. Inventions that helped the farmers, two big ones that like to show up on the AP exam, Cyrus McCormick's mechanical reaper and John Deere's steel plow. These are going to make farming more profitable. But the South doesn't invest in manufacturing. They relied on their agriculture, in this case cotton, and they don't really like new machinery because the slaves tend to break it. So South is going to stay very conservative, and they're going to become very backwards technologically speaking. You have immense growth of cities and towns. The market revolution increased the number of cities and towns. And cities emerged as trading and manufacturing centers such as Cincinnati, Porkopolis, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Chicago, etc. Pretty straightforward here. Now, what are some of the impacts? Well, people are living in bigger houses, they're wearing better clothes, they're buying cheaper products, and you start getting distinct social classes. You're going to get very much upper middle and lower working class. The business elite at the top. Prior to the revolution, social classes regularly interacted and even dressed similar. That's kind of unique about America as well, that the rich people could be seen talking on a daily basis with, farmers or working class people. But the Industrial Revolution kind of starts giving us more rigid class lines. But after these revolutions, like the Second Industrial Revolution, market revolution, the wealthy dressed in finer clothing. They had carriages and servants that, put them apart from other people. And employers and employees worked alongside each other far less. You rarely saw that happen anymore. You see a burgeoning middle class made up of successful farmers, merchants, and lawyers. 30% of the population in the 1840s in the Northeast was middle class. Middle class people's wives bought books and pianos, things like that, these luxury items. And middle class children actually receive a high school education beginning in this time period. Part of this with the idea of Republican motherhood, that we want an educated citizenry to make us a better country. We get the urban workers and the poor at the bottom. Poor workers were especially hit hard during economic downturns. As you can imagine, many of them will lose their jobs and they'll struggle. And they're not making just a ton of money anyway, so they're living paycheck to paycheck. And you start seeing the emergence of child labor, these young children who would work to help provide for their families. And this time period, 1830s, 1840s, 1850s, you start seeing the emergence of something called the Benevolent Empire, a big religious movement to reduce alcohol and vices. The early part of the 1800s was the Alcoholic Republic. So many alcohol played such a big role in America, and women paid the price for this. Beaten, abused, husbands cheating on them, husbands spending their money on alcohol, and there's a big movement to get rid of it because we see it as something that's bad for our country. Um, these religious people even encouraged the government to ban carnivals. However, it did improve society by creating homes for orphans and asylums for those with mental illnesses. Before this, people like Dorothy Dix are part of this reform movement. But before this, uh, asylum, if you were mentally crazy, you just got thrown in prison with the rest of the people. And there was really no clear way to take care of orphans. Women, of course, as always, play a huge role in this new benevolent empire movement. Many laborers resisted the movement, especially laws restricting activities on Sundays. That's because they needed the money. They have to have money, and they can't afford not to be working on even a Sunday. If you got employers willing to work them on Sunday and they can make more money, well, they want to work on it. And if you're attacking child labor, well, they need their children to work to make money. Charles Grandison Finney, Revivalism and Reform. This is the time period of Second Great Awakening and evangelical beliefs. Preachers are preaching that individuals have free will, that anybody can be saved, no more predestination, any of that. Wealthy individuals in Western New York really like it. Poor and the immigrants were not as affected by it because they just have to slug through life anyway. You get the temperance movement. That's a big one. You got to remember it. 200,000 members of the American Temperance Society who are urging people to abstain from alcohol, basically, stop drinking. They were very influential. And you fast forward quite a few years, about 100 or so, and we'll actually get the banning of alcohol for a short period. Now, there's immigration and cultural conflict. The old immigration were Germans and Irish, and you had a lot of Irish poverty because of the potato famine. Many Irish began settling in cities in the Northeast. They tended to be Catholics, which was an issue because it was we were a Protestant-dominated nation, and they tended to vote Democrat. You get the emergence of nativism, a term you have to remember forever. And it's pretty easy. It's just dislike and distrust of these new immigrants. Many Protestants feared the power of the Pope, that if you got too many Catholics in our country, they would answer to the Pope first and foremost. So that was a bit of an issue. You're going to see for a long time this issue with Protestants and with Catholics. Okay, looky there. We're already to the end. So remember the little girls, part of the first factories, the first mill system. They're single girls making extra money for their families, and it gives them a taste of independence. Eli Whitney invents the cotton gin, which keeps slavery going in the South. The Erie Canal and those that follow are huge economical impact in the Northeast and the Midwest. The market revolution is mostly in the Northeast and the Midwest, and it's going to create more of a transportation revolution with railroads coming, and it's going to create social classes, more distinct social classes. Second Great Awakening under Charles Grandison Finney. You're going to see a temperance movement for sure. That's a big one. And then you're going to see nativism, which is against new immigrants coming to the country, especially immigrants who happen to be Catholic. Okay, guys, that is it. Straightforward and to the point. Still make good notes right here, and we'll see you back